The first type of special right triangle is an isosceles right triangle. Here's the right angle, and these two sides are congruent. Now, how many degrees are there in a triangle? 180, right? 180 degrees in a triangle. How many degrees do we use up right there? 90. So we use up 90. How many are left? 90 degrees to be shared between this angle and this angle. So if they're shared, we divide by 2 and we get. So we have a 45, 45, 90 triangle. That's what we call it, is a 45, 45, 90. So if this side is 6, what's this side? 6, because it's isosceles, right? And we need to find the hypotenuse. So to find the hypotenuse, Pythagorean theorem. C squared equals a squared plus b squared. So x squared equals, what's x squared? 36 plus 36. X squared equals 72. Take the square root. What's a perfect square that goes into 72? Well, it's kind of right in front of you on the board. 36. How many times? 2. So x equals 6 square root of 2. Okay, let's do another one with 3. So if this is 3 and this is 3, how do we find the hypotenuse? Well, x squared equals 3 squared plus 3 squared. What's 3 squared? 9. 9 plus 9 is 18. Square root of 18 is square root of what? Square root of what? What goes into there? 9. How many times? So x equals 3 square root of 2. See a pattern between these two? Six square root of 2. 3 square root of 2. If this is 4 and 4, what would this side be? Amazing! So this is how 45, 45, 90 triangles work. Whatever this is and this is the square root of 2 times a leg in a 45, 45, 90 triangle. You good with that? 45, 45, 90. Okay. But, there's always a but in here, because that would be just too easy if that's all we had to do. What if in a 45, 45, 90 triangle, and that looks kind of ugly, we only know the hypotenuse. We don't know the sides. Well, this side is x and this side is x, right? So 6 squared, the hypotenuse squared, equals x squared plus x squared. So 36 equals 2x squared. What do we do to each side? Divide by 2. X squared equals 18. Take the square root. What's the square root of 18? Square root of what? Square root of what? We just did it. 9 and 2. So it's 3 square root of 2. Okay. So what's the pattern here? Well, if I multiply by the square root of 2 to get to the hypotenuse, to get from the hypotenuse from the side, I multiply by the square root of 2. To go from the hypotenuse to the side, I divide by the square root of 2. Because 6 divided by the square root of 2, can't leave square root of 2 on the bottom, so we multiply top and bottom by square root of 2. We get 6 square root of 2 over 2, which is 3 square root of 2. So here's the 45. Here's the 45, 45. Oh, Mr. Bierschbach, you start thinking in your head before you write. 45, 45, 90 triangle formulas. If you want to write this down in your notebook, it's not a bad idea. If you know the sides, the hypotenuse is the side times the square root of 2. If you know the sides, then the hypotenuse is the sides times the square root of 2. If you know the hypotenuse and you want to get to the sides, you divide by the square root of 2. Know the 45, 45, 90 formulas. Okay, so if you have them written down somewhere, that's a good thing. So, to get from the side to the hypotenuse, you just multiply by the square root of 2. That's the easy one. To get from the hypotenuse to the side, you divide by the square root of 2. Gabrielle, are you good? Okay. Now, that's one of the two special right triangles. The other one is a 30, 60, 90 right triangle. Okay, 30, 60, 90. So let's say, let me just give you the formulas right off the bat. If we know the short side of a 30, 60, 90, to get to the long leg, this is the long leg. This is the short leg. And this is the hypotenuse. So you multiply by what to get to the long leg? Well, you multiply by the square root of 3. Not the square root of 2, the square root of 3 to get to the long leg. So the short leg is x. To get to the long leg, you multiply by the square root of 3. To get the hypotenuse, you multiply by 2. So that's the 30, 60, 90 formula. Okay. So let's say this side is 10. And this is a 30-degree angle and the 60-degree angle. So this is the short leg. Short leg's opposite the 30. The long leg's opposite the 60. And the hypotenuse is opposite the right angle. So if this is 10, how long is the long leg going to be? 10 square root of 3. And how long is the hypotenuse going to be? 20. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, right? What if you're given the hypotenuse as 18? When you're given the hypotenuse or the long leg, you have to find the short leg first. How long is the short leg compared to the hypotenuse? Well, the hypotenuse is 2x and the short leg is x. The short leg is half the hypotenuse. How long is the short leg here? 9. Once you find the short leg, it's easy to get to the long leg. Just multiply by the square root of 3. So 9 square root of 3, 18. Let's say you're given the long leg as 6. Because there's the 60-degree angle, here's the 30-degree angle. Let's say the long leg is 6. Always find the short leg first. Well, for the short leg, if I multiply by the square root of 3 to get to the long leg, if I'm at the long leg to get to the short leg, instead of multiplying by the square root of 3, I would divide by the square root of 3. So I have to take 6 divided by the square root of 3. Can you leave the square root on the bottom? Nope. So you have to multiply top and bottom by square root of 3. So you get 6 square root of 3 over 3. Can you reduce 6 and 3 down? What's 6 divided by 3? 2. So it's 2 square root of 3. So your short leg is 2 square root of 3. Short leg is 2 square root of 3. How do I get from the short leg to my hypotenuse? Multiply by, look at your formula, multiply by 2. What's 2 times 2? So it's 4 square root of 3 is my hypotenuse. 4 square root of 3 is my hypotenuse. No, I don't want to go square root of 27. Let's just go square root of 3. How about that? Okay, short leg is square root of 3. Short leg is square root of 3. How do I get from the short leg to the long leg? Multiply by square root of 3. To get from the short leg to the long leg, you multiply by square root of 3, right? What's square root of 3 times square root of 3? Square root of 9, which is 3. How do you get from the short leg to the hypotenuse? You multiply by 2. So it's 2 square root of 3. Okay. So here's a 45, 45, 90, 30, 60, 90. Let's say this is 5 square root of 2 right here. Let's find A, B, C, and D. Now, this is the what? The leg or the hypotenuse of the 45, 45, 90? Leg or hypotenuse? Hypotenuse. To get from the hypotenuse to the side, you divide by the square root of 2. What's 5 square root of 2 divided by square root of 2? What would it be? 5. So A would equal 5. What would B equal? What would B equal in a 45, 45, 90? Remember, these two sides are the same, so B would equal 5. Because in 45, 45, 90, these two sides are the same. Now, we know the short side of the 30, 60, 90. If the short side is 5, how do we get to the long leg? Short leg is 5. What do we do to get to the long leg? We multiply by the square root of 3. So C is 5 square root of 3. And D, how do we get to the hypotenuse? Multiply by 2. So D is 10. So I'm going to give you a worksheet with a bunch of these 30, 60, 90, 45, 45, 90 problems on them, where you just have to use the formulas to get the sides. Okay? So that's what we're doing for Monday. So if you haven't finished your other worksheet, let's try to get it done today and get it handed in. But yeah, there we go.